These stories were pulled from Reddit. Their authors will be displayed at the beginning of each story. Want to make sure they are given a shout out for sharing their stories. I've been a mall Santa for years now. It's a pretty easy job. I just need to get into a saint costume and sit in a chair listening to some kids' wishes. Most kids would wish for toys, games, or other things. And I listen and sometimes give a ho ho ho. But one girl stood out to me. She has brown hair, blue eyes, and she couldn't be any more than 6 years old before you say it. No, I'm not a predator or anything. There was just one thing about her when she came to me. She sat in my lap. She didn't have a smile like the other kids did. She said, "Santa, my uncle is so rude. He's so bossy and insults me and Mommy. Can you do something about it?" And I told her, "Don't worry. With the Christmas spirit, Santa can do anything. You just have to believe in it and everything will be fine." She smiled and I asked for her name. And she told me it's Elena. She walked away and I felt bad for her. No one should have a terrible uncle like that. As the other kids sat on my lap, I decided for now it's best for me to focus on my job. A year passed before she came again. When she sat on my lap, she wasn't smiling again. She said, "Santa, there's this kid Brandon at my school and he keeps messing with me and the school doesn't stop him. Can you stop him?" I felt bad. No kid should go through bullying, but what can I do? Well, maybe something, I tell her. "Don't worry, Elena. Use the same power as last year. Believe in the Christmas spirit." She smiled and said, "Okay, and you remembered my name." I let out a ho 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 before saying, "Santa remembers everyone's name." Zrania, of course, she left as another kid sat in my lap again. I felt bad for her, but I had to focus on work again. Finally, the next year she came again. This time her mother seemed sad, and when she sat on my lap, it looked like she was about to cry. She said, "Santa, Mom's new boyfriend keeps getting angry and hits her and me too." I felt anger that I never felt before. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She said, "Can you use the Christmas spirit again?" And I said, "Yes, you just have to believe in the Christmas spirit." She left again as another kid sat on my lap. A week went by as I went to the girl's house. I was in the same Santa costume. I went inside the house and I saw her new stepfather asleep on the couch. I thought I'd have to wait until he went to the bathroom late at night to confront him or drag him outside his bedroom, but there he was on the bed. I took out a knife and woke him up. As he comprehended everything, he suddenly made a worried face as I slit his throat. I took some stuff and knocked over a lamp to make it look like a robbery. As I left the house quietly, it felt right. I doubt Elena knows. Hell, I doubt her mother even knows, but that I'm her real father. I remember strangling her uncle in his house. His terrified expression made it feel good because of what he's done to my daughter. I remember killing her bully Brandon and hiding his body inside a pit in the forest. Ever since Mrs. Siegman left me, I never got to see our daughter. But now I did. Eventually Elena will grow up and stop believing in Santa. But until then, I will get rid of all the bad people in her life and make sure she doesn't have any terrible people left in her life, or at least not as many as she would have. I don't care what anyone says. I see what I did as the right thing. That's what fathers should do, or at least that's what I did. There's no talking to those people. I'm glad I saved Elena from them. Who knows, maybe I'll see her again one day. It was the kind of summer people dream of, long hot with the sky stretching pale blue over the English countryside. The family cottage was the perfect escape. Secluded, charming, surrounded by sprawling gardens where we spent our days lounging on the patio, sipping wine and basking in the sun. I was there with my young daughter, her laughter a constant melody, and the rest of our extended family. It was idyllic, a snapshot of happiness frozen in time, like something from a novel. But inside the house, something was changing. My daughter, drawn to the large, long-forgotten playroom, began spending hours there. She talked of imaginary friends, fantastical worlds, things that seemed harmless at first. She told me stories about a witch, her tone light and innocent as if it were all part of her game. But soon, her behavior shifted. Little things at first, moments when her eyes seemed darker, her voice sharper. The air around her grew heavier, colder. Then the strange occurrences began. A misplaced toy here, a door creaking open on its own, shadows that danced in corners where light should have swallowed them. My teenage nephew, once indifferent, became obsessed. In the evenings, he whispered to me, claiming he no longer believed it was my daughter in the playroom, but something else, something malevolent. He insisted an evil spirit had taken hold of her, A witch inside her skin. I didn't want to believe it, but there was something in my daughter's eyes I no longer recognized, something that terrified me. The rest of the family grew fearful too, avoiding her, whispering behind closed doors. My nephew and I began hatching plans, desperate to rid her of the evil we were convinced had possessed her. I couldn't bear the thought of abandoning my own child to something so dark. Yet with each failed attempt, I found myself more afraid of her. The mania crept in slowly, insidiously. What began as concern morphed into feverish obsession. We conducted rituals, our voices rising in desperate chants as night deepened. We swore we saw things, glimpses of the witch in flickering candlelight, felt her presence lurking in the shadows. Even the house itself seemed to pulse with the spirit's presence. Soon, we were all lost, spiraling deeper into shared madness, convinced the only way to save my daughter was to drive the spirit out. By the time her father arrived, it was already too late. He found us frantic, wild-eyed, convinced we had been fighting a battle only we could see. He didn't believe us, he couldn't. He searched the house, his rational mind piercing through the fog of hysteria. And that's when he found it. The carbon monoxide leak, seeping into the air we'd been breathing for days, poisoning our minds. He ordered us out of the house immediately, but I resisted. Even then, I couldn't shake the certainty that what we'd seen was real. Only later, outside in the cool air, did the truth begin to settle. There had been no witch, no possession, just the toxic air warping our minds, driving us to madness. But the damage was done. I looked at my daughter, silent and wide-eyed, her small body trembling. She no longer looked at me with love and trust, but with fear. In her eyes, we had become monsters, a family that had turned on her, terrorized her, convinced of an evil that never existed. As we drove away from the cottage, the sun setting behind us, the car was thick with silence. My daughter sat in the back seat, staring out the window, her hands tightly folded in her lap. She was petrified of us now, of her own family, and no amount of truth could undo the trauma we had inflicted. The summer, once golden and perfect, had turned into a nightmare from which we could never wake.